All right, welcome back to Draws and Fades, episode 122, preview of the Honda Classic at PGA National in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. I'm your host, Owen Vrabel, joined by my co-host, Matthew Miller.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back.
As always, this podcast is sponsored by Rotoballer. Got a lot to get into from last week. Jon Rahm wins in impressive fashion at the Genesis, holds off Max Homa on Sunday. So we'll give you a recap of the Genesis. Some pretty big storylines. Obviously, Tiger was back. Very impressive showing from him. Rahm and Homa kind of dueled it out on Sunday. Didn't have much action alive on the weekend, unfortunately, but some other storylines as well. And then we'll get into our course preview at PGA National. Very tough golf course with a absolutely horrendous field this week. So we should be in for some firework implosions this week for sure. And we'll get into the odds list on FanDuel. It's really gross. It is one of those weeks where you can kind of bet some of your prototypical guys you love to bet, and they're going to be at worse numbers for the most part. And you can try to find some long shots in there as well. But we'll give you our thoughts on the outright market, top 20s, top 40s, and my one and done thoughts at the end. But yeah, this is kind of, I guess, what the PGA now has created with the elevated events is that there are going to be events in between where the Honda this year just gets absolutely boned. Coming off two elevated events in a row, then the API next week, Arnold Palmer is an elevated event as well, and then the Players is the week following. So they're just sandwiched in between big events, and there's just not many good players that showed up this week. So
yeah, the last 2 weeks we saw the upside of the elevated events. Awesome leaderboards, awesome finishes. I guess Scheffler kind of, won in Phoenix. You kind of had a feeling he was going to win, but last week was awesome down to the end. And this week we see the downside. The field's horrible. It's going to be most likely, if the top guys are not up at that, up top of the leaderboard, it's going to feel a lot like a Puerto Rico Open.
Yeah,
which is a shame because this is a pretty cool course. It's
a tough test.
It's like when the leaderboard's good. It's a good event. It's Brooks usually plays here. Daniel Berger, Ricky Fowler. You usually get a pretty decent, group of golfers here. Pretty decent field, and this year it's just completely obliterated because of where it is on the schedule.
Yeah, but it's really not even like the top guys. Obviously most of the top 20 players in the world are not here. But it's not even that. We've seen multiple WDs even just since the Genesis has finished. Sam Ryder's not playing. I think he probably saved a ton of people money this week because he would have been popular. Who knows where he would have been on the odds were. Just in the time that we've kind of started talking, Alex Noren is now not playing. The field is pretty watered down. But like I mentioned in the opening, there are still a decent amount of the middle tier, so to speak, of the PGA Tour, and that's why the odds this week just aren't really that good because there's not a ton of notorious winners here, and a lot of the more popular names that are typically in the long shot range from 70 to 100 are in that middle tier. It's kind of tough to really make a card this week with any confidence, but at the same time, feels like at least a pretty open event. And that way, there is the potential for a long shot winner. Obviously, PGA Tour as a brand still gets they're going to get a ton of TV time. A lot of these younger players, unproven players, long shot type players have the chance to make a name for themselves here. But it's a really tough course. And I think we've seen that over the years too, just the timing of the Honda Classic. If you're not a Florida swing guy, this is an event where you're potentially just going to get your ass kicked, and it might not be that fun of a week. There's going to be low scoring winner. Last year, Daniel Berger looked like he was a shoo-in to win, and then completely imploded on Sunday. And then more storylines. Sepp Straka was on fire down the stretch, and then Shane Lowry got rained on the last hole, complained about it, and Sepp Straka ended up winning. So there's still the potential for some storylines to develop here. We definitely still have some players that we like to bet on in this field. And then, like I said, it's potential to put some bets in at a little longer of prices. I think it's one of those weeks that maybe in a DFS perspective, it's easier to be a little bit more unique this week because people will probably be all over the place. From an outright betting perspective, it's really tough to kind of narrow in on what you feel confident in doing this week. We'll get into the top of the board. It's nothing spectacular. And so it makes you kind of want to get more value. But last week, the Genesis, Rom, we mentioned it. You asked me the question of those top three players right now, Scotty, Rom, and Rory, who feels like the best. And Rom clearly, I think, has separated himself. I mean, obviously Scheffler won the week before at Waste Management, but it just seems like Rom is just continuously inside the top 10 and with a chance on the weekend in most tournaments he plays in. And you can't really say that for most other guys. And Rory is certainly different than that because he throws in some stinkers every now and again. And we've kind of seen that now in back-to-back weeks, really. I mean, he played a little bit better, I guess, at the Genesis and at Waste Management. But, yeah, I think Rom is just clearly an absolute machine, and he's scary when he's on. And when he's getting lucky bounces and good breaks on lost balls, he's going to be tough to beat. So I felt bad for Max Homa to an extent. He played really well, couldn't quite put it together on Sunday, but Rom just really didn't give him a ton of openings.
Yeah, I mean, Rom's he has 5 events so far this year. He has 3 wins, and the 2 he hasn't won, he's been in the final group.
Yeah,
like it's absolutely absurd. So he's kind of separated himself from the pack. He's just so consistent. He did get a few breaks, but that's part of winning. He's too good to be getting those because if he's getting these breaks, like he's already hard enough to beat. We don't need it. But it's part of the game. And
yeah, because then you don't know what would have happened. Like he doesn't get that bounce in to tap in eagle range on the 17th on Saturday. Like so he doesn't have a 3-shot lead and he ends up with a 1-shot lead. Like I mean, you never know what's going to happen regardless. So it's easy to say that you can take those strokes away and then take the strokes away for his OB ball, but it seems like he probably still would have won.
Yeah, he's pretty. I mean, he's been ridiculous to start the year, and Homa gave him a good run. I mean, we've talked about Homa too, how impressive he's been over the last year or so. This is another good example. He fought down to the end with Rom. He's kind of putting himself in that upper echelon of guys. He also, I mean, he had a ridiculous putting week. What do you have? 93 total putts, I think I saw.
Yeah, gained over 9 strokes putting,
which is like absolutely insane.
But honestly, he doesn't it seem like he's kind of gotten into that range as a putter, like just clutch. Like you feel like if he's standing over a 7 or 8 footer for par, he's gonna make it.
He's gonna make it.
He makes a lot of those like mid-range birdie putts, and he's pretty nails like on the knee knockers inside 5 feet. So
yeah, I mean he's like the ultimate grinder. And we talk about it, at these events where you got to save par and stuff like that. I mean, Homa, he seems to be just kind of every time he's in one of these things. And this is the first time that we've seen him kind of in the mix down the stretch and not win, which is to his credit too. He's been closing these out every time, and he fought hard with Rom this past week too. Just ultimately came up a little bit short.
Yeah. So some other, I guess, just notable stories. Obviously, Tiger shoots 69 on Thursday, 73 on Friday, makes the cut, shoots 67 on Saturday, and then again, kind of a little disappointing on Sunday. But I mean, he makes the cut, looked really good. I mean, I was there on Friday. He looked. I followed his group for a significant portion. It was tough because basically the whole everyone who bought a ticket was there to see Tiger for the most part. So I would kind of jump around holes and try to find good viewing spots for him. But I mean, he looked pretty natural walking. He obviously has a limp. His leg is shattered. I mean, he almost lost his leg. So the fact that he's able to walk that course, it is not an easy trek. And he looked pretty comfortable. And he's out driving Rory on certain holes. His iron play was still really sharp. And then he missed some putts I'm sure he would have liked to make. But in terms of like what you're expecting from Tiger moving forward, I think it's hard to really count him out necessarily of like, for the most part, definitely making cuts at the Masters for one, or a place he feels super comfortable at. But I'm obviously, grew up loving watching Tiger, so I'm not going to count him out of even winning. I mean, it sounds crazy, but he puts together that Thursday round followed by his Saturday round going into the weekend. You're thinking completely differently as to what he could have done last week at an event he's never really had success at. So I thought it was super encouraging for him, and the odds are going to suck. So, that being said, I think how many events left is he going to play in his career? Is he going to play 4 majors and maybe a couple events a year for 5 to 7 years? That's 25 events. I mean, you're going to get him at least over 40 to 1, probably, or over 35. So he just needs to win one, and you're going to make money on Tiger. So it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think he definitely exceeded my expectations going into the week. He looked good. I mean, ball striking wise, I thought he hit it far. His irons were pretty good. Like you said, I mean, he missed some putts that he would normally make. I think that's probably best case scenario on, the part of your game that's struggling is putting. Like that's
Right.
not really like the physical part that people are worried about. I think I guess somewhat concerning part would be Sunday. The ball speed when the club head speed was down a little bit. It's his first tournament back. I mean, I think he's going to continue to heal and recover. But for, of course, like Augusta, that's going to be strenuous walking wise. It's going to take a toll on his body. But I definitely think what we saw from him was far better than what I expected. It was definitely encouraging. And yeah, like you said, if he gets himself into the mix, kind of start running on adrenaline. You get a lot more of that when you're toward the top of the leaderboard than when
I like that.
You're making the cut on the number. So
yeah. I know you're not nearly as big of a Tiger guy as me, but yeah, I mean, and obviously it was the Genesis. It was his first like non-major in over 2 years since the accident. So, a lot of encouraging signs. I am somewhat of a fanboy of Tiger. He's the best golfer, I think, in my opinion, that's ever played. And we've seen, like I think even just mentioning last week, I mean, we've seen even Matt Kuchar contended, kind of last week. We've seen Stewart Cink have success on the PGA Tour, not necessarily in the events that Tiger is going to be looking to win, but he's not Matt Kuchar or Stewart Cink or any of these other veterans that are over 40. He's Tiger Woods. So a lot of encouraging signs. I think we'll see him again before the Masters. That's my guess. Just because he looked comfortable enough, and I think if you give him a 2-3 weeks off, maybe he'll play the Players. I don't know, but just kind of that time off in between events, I think will be big for him. And then the strain of doing 4 straight rounds, I think maybe he'll get used to mentally. And his leg is going to continue to be at least a little bit more healthy as time goes on until I guess until there's maybe a steep decline at some point. But him making the cut and looking, even the fact that he shot 4 under on one round, I think was impressive.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know if we're going to see him before the Masters or not. I mean, I think the Players would be the logical spot. I think Arnold Palmer's a quick turnaround, and then if you're after the Players, it doesn't feel like that. I mean, he's not going to play the Valspar, so it's really got to be the Players because he's not going to play right before Augusta either. So that's going to be the spot if we see him, I would say.
Right. So encouraging signs from him. Just some other things that I had. Obviously, Zalatoris played really well. There was concerns from him not playing to Waste Management. I think he kind of put all those like injury concerns to rest. I think his odds will probably reflect that moving forward. The dude is just a stud. I watched him a bunch on Friday as well. Such a superb ball striker. And if he didn't, his finish on Saturday was underwhelming. And if he had given himself a few more birdies before Sunday, I mean, he's right in the mix on Sunday. He played great. I think he shot 7 under. There were moments where I felt like he could kind of sneak into the mix. He had missed like a 14-footer on 8 for birdie. He didn't birdie 10, which would have been nice. But at the end of the day, he was going to need to get to what Rahm finished at 19 under.
Yeah, that might be right. I don't know the exact number.
So I was impressed with Willie Z, and it kind of he finished at 17 under, and Zalatoris finished at 13. So again, a couple more birdies over the week, I think he would have been right in the mix. But again, can't take back missed opportunities as the weekend goes on. So
are you going to be on Will at the Masters? Are you on him?
It's going to be tough for me to not really be on him for most of these majors this year. I mean, really, even odds dependent. I think his game probably suits best at the U.S. Open and the PGA Championship. But I mean, we've seen him play well at the Masters. I think he's not locked in as of now, but I would be surprised if I'm not heavily leaning towards playing him, just because it seems like the majors are going to be something that he thrives in. And it's funny because you don't think of him necessarily as a grinder per se, but he's just so good off the tee and so good on approach that he doesn't. And in his short game is a little underrated, I think, at this point. I mean, obviously his putting stroke is disgusting to watch, but his around the green game, even his bunker game, is not horrible, and he doesn't put himself in bad positions often. So I think he's live for pretty much every major championship he's in until we see something completely different from him. So I was very encouraged by him. And then I really jinxed Ricky Fowler.
Yeah, your tweet.
Yeah. So he had 13 consecutive rounds, par or better at pretty impressive tournaments. I mean, the Farmers, the Waste Management, and first round at Riviera, also the Amex. But he bounced back on the weekend, finished 20th at the Genesis. So, I mean, his last three events, 11th at the Farmers, 10th at Waste Management, 20th at the Genesis. Pretty impressive. And he lost over a stroke and a half putting last week, which was a big change from gaining over 4 strokes at the Waste Management and the Farmers. So I think when he's comfortable with his putter, all other aspects of his game have still looked really good. He's gained over 4 strokes on approach now in 3 consecutive events. And I locked in 100-1 players bet in on him for this upcoming year. So surprised to not see him this week. Probably would have enjoyed seeing him here just because of how shitty the field is, and would have been nice to have him here. But I guess he just kind of has his sights set on bigger things and wants to take a week off. And I guess he's feeling confident enough that he can still qualify to get into the Masters with his play at Arnold Palmer and the Players. So
yeah, I was surprised. I mean, I know he's had success at the Arnold Palmer and obviously the Players as well. Just not to see him this week, just because. I mean, I understand it's a lot. Like, he's been playing a lot of golf, so you do need that week off in there. But this does feel like a very winnable event if there is one on the schedule for him. And yeah, that would be a free pass into the Masters if he did that. So
yeah, it is funny though. I mentioning just like the mentality of this event is tough, and so like you're feeling good about your game. Riviera was tough, and he ended up playing well in 3 rounds and kind of shitting the bed in 1. And so maybe he just didn't want to have to go through the grind of playing the Honda. I mean, which is funny to say, but I mean, it is a tough course, and you the potential for, confidence-wise, losing some confidence off hitting some water balls, playing it out of the sand a bunch, and it just maybe is not that appealing, besides the fact that it's not an elevated event. So those are my 2 biggest takeaways. Obviously, William Z and Ricky played the best off of my card. I mentioned it last week that I had a feeling Homa and Morikawa were going to play well, even though I didn't take them. Morikawa looked great, and then he kind of faded away on the weekend. And then your guy Cantlay, who you took the week prior, ended up playing great golf last week as well. And he kind of snuck around, stayed in it on Sunday. He missed some putts that he could have gotten into a little bit more contention, but those are kind of my biggest takeaways, I guess, from Genesis.
Yeah, I saw Cantlay tried out a new driver this past week, and he led the field off the tee. So maybe something to keep an eye on. His next couple of events before we get into major season. I don't know if I'm gonna. I don't know if I'm gonna get there with Cantlay at a major or not. But he's certainly kind of going to be falling into that range with the Zalatoris and guys like that you got to start eyeing.
Right.
Especially, leading up to it. So, yeah, I think I'm on kind of the same page as you and everything that's going on. Rory definitely was disappointing. He had a decent start on Thursday, but he does that, man. Like, these big events, it seems like you have a guy like Rahm who, like, he doesn't ever have – well, I shouldn't say that, but right now, the way he's been playing, he doesn't have those weeks where he's just, like, not good.
Right.
And not that Rory was bad, but like he didn't put together 4 rounds again. How many times have we said that with him in a bigger event?
Yeah, I mean, he ended up
He was
13
fine
shots.
going into the weekend. I mean, he was kind of in it. He was -6, and he had a horrible Saturday and just played himself completely out of it. And that seems to be a common trend with him. Not that he was, feeling the pressure of a major on him in this event, but he was chasing down, kind of some elite guys. And once again, he came up small when he needed a big round, and it kind of seems to be a trend with him.
Yeah, no, I mean, I obviously went back-to-back on Justin Thomas. He was disappointing as well. Very similar to Rory. I mean, there were moments where it looked like maybe he could get hot, but didn't put nearly enough together on Thursday and Friday. Played decently Saturday, Sunday. I mean, decently is being nice. But he did finish T20, but for a guy under 20-1, and like Rory for you was a 10-1, not even really being in contention is tough to swallow. So we'll see where we end up with them in the bigger events moving forward. We'll see if we get any more of better odds on at least JT. I would expect Rory to not really get too much of a bump, but JT he's like kind of fading out of that elite group into more of a mix between, maybe like 7 to 12 best player in the world. And he can get hot, but it's really tough to kind of predict where he's going to be at. But those types of players we're not dealing with this week. So we are at PGA National in Florida, beginning of the Florida swing. We'll get into the odds list in a minute, but just give the people a little bit of an insight on PGA National. Like I mentioned, tough course, not a lot of the elite players. I would have a tough time believing that we're going to get a winning score in the double digits, but we'll see.
Yeah, tough course this week. Par 70, 7,125 yards, Bermuda greens, 4 par 3s. 2 of them are over 215 yards, but all 4 of them played over par last year. The 2 par 5s are the 2 easiest holes in the course, and then you're left with the 12 par 4s, which kind of really separate everybody. And you could say that, a lot of weeks, but this week, you assume that most guys are going to take advantage of the par 5s. And most guys are going to struggle with the par 3s. And, a lot of the ground is made up there on the par 4s. So some previous winners last year, Sepp Straka won. You kind of touched on it in the opening, but Daniel Berger looked like he had that one won. He was up 3 shots on Sunday, and he kind of fell apart. Hopefully we see him again soon, because it feels like we haven't seen him since this event last year. He's been gone for quite some time.
Yeah.
Shane Lowry looked like he was then going to win it, and then he hit a shot in the rain and was kind of, crying about it. And Sepp Straka ended up winning, to his credit.
Yeah, no, that was pretty funny with Lowry last year. I mean, obviously he's the European golfer, like, should be used to the elements, and then just kind of got flustered. I mean, I understand it was right at the end of his round. He was in contention, tough break, but gotta hit the shots, dude.
Yeah, that was, we're not huge Lowry guys regardless, but that was embarrassing from him. Matt Jones won the year before, -12. I was trying to forget about that year until I, looked and saw that one.
He won by 5 strokes too, which is insane.
Yeah, that was just crazy. Sungjae Im won the year prior to that at -6. That one actually, Tommy Fleetwood looked like he was going to win for a little bit. He hit just a ridiculously stupid shot on 18, I think.
Water ball.
Yeah, to lose that for himself. Tommy just couldn't stay out of his own way. And
I'm pretty sure I had Sungjae that year as well. So,
and I'm just going to go a year further back for, shout out my boy Keith Mitchell, who picked up.
Surprising not see him this year too.
Yeah, I know. I think it's just because he was, I don't know. Yeah, he's been playing well too.
Well, he's been grinding, and I just feel like this is just a place that even like the above average PGA Tour players is going to kind of skip with it, even former champions, which is interesting. So
no Keith, and actually I think Ricky Fowler was here before that as well. So both of our boys right there. But yeah, we kind of hit the nail on the head before. Water all throughout the course. It's in play on 15 holes, 67 bunkers. On top of just the water and the traps and the hazards that you're going to deal with throughout the course, we get a lot of wind here a lot. That's why you see winning scores in the single digits some years, even when they get into the double digits. I mean, Matt Jones won on -12. He won by 5 shots. He could have won that event at -8. Sepp Straka last year barely got into double digits. He was -10. So it's very tough to score well at this course. A lot of guys are going to put up bogeys and doubles throughout the week. Bear trap, 15, 16, 17. It's the toughest stretch on the course. Last year, this is a stat I saw from Pat Mayo, the field shot plus 30 on the week on these holes. Plus 230. Sorry.
230.
Yeah, plus 230 from the field. So just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's really tough, obviously, to predict this event. You need to have a really good control of your ball. Like you said, the wind, ton of hazards. So, I mean, I'm looking for guys that have hit the ball decently off the tee and then can make up with their irons. Kind of a mid-range golf course. It's not super long. That's why it's surprising that Keith Mitchell's not here, because this is definitely a course that suits him well. And a lot of the guys that are confident off the tee and then also have the ability to play well with their irons. And then, you do have to be able to grind it here. You can't be making bogeys. So bogey avoidance is on my list of stats to look at. Putting on Bermuda, and then, guys who play well in difficult scoring conditions, I think is something else you look at. But you can make 1,000 different models this week. I don't know if it's going to spit out the winner for you. So it's really value-based betting for me this week for the most part. And then it's one of those weeks too. Bet your favorite losers. This is a week that they have a better chance than most if they're here. So that's where my head's at. Let's get into the odds board. Sungjae Im, former champion, and definitely the best player in the field, is at plus 750, which is gross. So Sungjae Im plus 750 on FanDuel. And then Shane Lowry under 20-1 at 15-1. Those are the only two guys under 20. And then we got a slew of pretty gross names between 20 and 35 with Kuchar, Chris Kirk, Horschel, Minwoo Lee, who is actually probably, in terms of form and potential, probably right behind Sungjae. He's at 25-1. Aaron Wise as well at 25, and then Denny McCarthy at 28. That's under 30. So after that, we'll get into the mid-range. But top of the board, I mean, really nothing interests me. I've heard guys talking up Minwoo Lee to an extent. Obviously, Sungjae is by far the best player here, but nothing intriguing enough for me to dabble anything under 31.
No, I'm on the same page. I mean, if we're not going to bet, I understand the field is way better, but if I'm not going to take John Rahm at 9-1, I'm certainly not going to take Sungjae at plus 750.
Yeah. What do you think Rahm would be at if he was here this week? 2-1?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, 5-1 maybe.
I think it'd be less. I really do.
Yeah, which is crazy. Yeah, maybe. I mean, when's the last time we saw someone that low? I guess we saw maybe like DJ at Pebble Beach when he was on top of his form, was like plus 450 or something.
Right. But yeah, that's a good comparison, because that's been a weak field for a few years. So, but yeah, it's crazy. So even like I said, like some of our other favorite players, like either Mitchell and Russell Henley's won here before, and he's not here this week either. So, a couple of guys that we definitely would have wasted money on this week are not here, along with a slew of other guys, Ricky, Ryder, Noren. So yeah, really tough to take a look at the top of the board. I think Lowry, I guess, is relatively encouraging, but 15-1 is really tough. I think he'll probably really be motivated to have some redemption for last year. Billy Horschel not got off to a good start this year. I think that's just a name number being at 24. And then it's really tough for me to take Chris Kirk, Minwoo, or Wise or McCarthy under 30-1. And, I do love betting Denny McCarthy, but there's other guys I also love to bet who are at better numbers. So
yeah, completely fair.
So over 30-1, I think gets a little bit more interesting. We got Svensson at 32, Detry and Posen, with Pendrith and Johnny Vegas all at 34-1 on FanDuel, and then Harris English at 37. Then we got a long list of guys between 44 and 60. Zaynhout, Morong, Cam Davis, Lee Hodges, Robbie Shelton, Benny On, Sepp Straka, last year's champion, Bramlett, Higo, Griffin, Hayden Buckley, Stephen Yeager, and then we're over 65. And so what is definitely considered long shot range, even in this, even though the odds may not say they're true long shots, guys that have not won very often on tour recently. So between 30 and 60, Matt, what are you looking at? This is our typical range. I'm going to stick to it. I think these guys, if you take two or three of the guys in this range, I think you'll have a chance that one of them is involved on the weekend, and that's kind of where my hopes lie.
Yeah, it's tough, but I'm gonna go with one of my guys. I mean, I'm gonna pick JT Poston, 34-1.
I like it.
Yeah, he's been struggling a little bit lately. He started off the year really good. It's been some tougher events, but he's a two-time PGA winner, so he definitely has the ability to win. I think some of these guys he's surrounded with are not as experienced with him. I mean, Svensson did get his win, but Detchery has not won on the PGA Tour. Pendrith has not won. Moronk, Zadenhout. A lot of these guys are not, winners. So I think Poston, if he's in the mix, has that ability to close out. We really like his short game. He kind of fits the profile you're looking for, where he's kind of that shorter, accurate hitter. He's going to need to dial in his irons this week if he wants to compete. But, in this field, I don't think it's a terribly unfair number for him. So I'm going to take a shot, 34-1.
I like it. I'm going to join you on the Postman this week. Yeah, I mean, his approach and ball striking numbers are not spectacular. His off the tee numbers are not spectacular, but they're above average, especially in this field. He's solid at bogey avoidance, nothing great. Nothing is jumping off at you, and in terms of his current form. But he did finish 6th at the Amex not too long ago, coming off a couple of missed cuts. I don't hate it, like you said. He is a proven winner. And I think the number is pretty fair. I mean, before his last 2 missed cuts, he had strung together 4 really nice performances in a row, kind of to start the season. Well, not start the season, but to open up 2023. So I think this week's going to be tough mentally in terms of your golf game, but in terms of how he feels the ability to win this week, I'm sure he's coming into it with confidence. So I like the post and play. I'm going to be jumping all over this range. So a guy who actually did jump off in relative sense on my model, and the guy who I've bet recently to start this year, Taylor Pendrith, 13th in my model. I mean, he's 11th in ball striking over his last 36 rounds in this field, 5th in off the tee, 33rd in strokes gained total in difficult scoring conditions. And I think in terms of upside in this field, he's got the ability to win PGA Tour events. He's only played here once, finished 25th here last year. And he lost strokes around the green, but he really hit his irons well and was good off the tee. So if he can kind of switch that around with his putter, hit a few more, I guess, better scrambling numbers, I think he can get himself in the mix. And I guess it hasn't come into fruition as much as it did the year prior, but I still think guys coming in off that President's Cup run, he's still feeling some confidence from that. And I like Taylor Pendrith, so I'm going to go with it this week. Same number as Poston. Did finish 7th at the Pebble Beach not too long ago, so I like it. I don't love it, but I like it.
Yeah, no, I mean he's got the upside. We took him a couple times at the beginning of the year and kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but it seems like he's starting to, he turned it around the week that we got off him, I think, at Pebble Beach. So
right.
Maybe that's all he needed to get himself going. I don't hate the play.
Yeah. And so I'm just going to stick in this range. I'm going back to Harris English. We talked about Harris English a ton on this podcast. He's won us money before. And this is a golf course where he's been pretty consistent at. I mean, he's got 3 top 20 finishes. And in terms of confidence of a guy that, again, similar to Poston, someone that could close a tournament, he's a proven winner, would be able to feel comfortable on the weekend, even though we saw Daniel Berger play really poorly on Sunday. I mean, anything could really happen on Sunday at this course. You're going to have to be in control of your ball, like I said. But he putted the lights out last week at the Genesis, which I guess isn't overly, optimistic in terms of the other parts of his game. He wasn't great off the tee or on approach, but he finished 12th at a really difficult tournament last week. So I like that as a springboard for him to play well in the Florida swing. So I'm going to take my shot in this range here. Harris English is on board with Pendrith and Poston.
Yeah, I mean, he's trending in the right direction after last week, and he is a proven winner. So, I don't hate that.
Did not model well, obviously. He's not played well over his last 36 rounds. So, yeah.
Well, over his last 4, he at least has a good result.
Yeah, so we'll take that.
I'm gonna take the guy right below him on the odds list. I'm gonna go Seabass.
Okay.
Not playing well lately. That's putting it lightly. But what I do like about him is he's good in Florida. So last year he was 20th at the Arnold Palmer, 25th at the Honda. 2021 he was 41st at the Players, 7th at the Arnold Palmer, and then 2020 he was 18th at the Arnold Palmer. So something about Seabass when he gets into this Florida swing, he kind of starts to play some of his best golf. I think that's kind of those South African guys, and to some degree the Aussies. We saw Matt Jones win here, but they're good when the wind picks up and it doesn't really affect them as much. So Seabass has not been striking the ball as well as I would like, but I'm hoping kind of this Florida swing wakes him up and he gets back to feeling more comfortable. And this is kind of where he's played well so far in his career. So I'm going to take a shot on him. 44. I don't think it's too bad of a number, especially given this field.
Yeah, no. And that's really the best part about this range, really from 30 to 60, is that you can have some hope and some spin zone for a lot of these guys, but you would see better numbers in most fields. So the number's not going to be great. It's definitely some value in is what a underwhelming field. So I'm kind of going to go down to more of the long shot territory. I think I'm kind of done under 70-ish. But I'm surprised. A few numbers that kind of stood out to me. Cam Davis has been really bad. He's still at 46 in this field. He's still getting respect that he has the ability to potentially win here. I will be pissed if he ends up playing well this week, but he's just been really bad, and I'm gonna waste my money elsewhere, I guess, so to speak. So, and then Lee Hodges was pretty impressive last week. Ended up in the final group, and then really did not live up to the moment playing with Rahm and Homa. So. I think he ended up finished like 18th or something like that. But he's at 46 to 1 too. I was interested to see if he would be in like the 70s or 80s. He's not, so you're gonna skip past him. Sepp Straka won last year at 50. I can see people going back to him. I don't hate that. But yeah, it's tough. And Garrick Higo has shown signs. I don't hate him at 55.
I was just gonna ask you about him.
Yeah, I don't hate it.
He's interesting. I mean, he's won before. He's South African too, right?
Yeah, he's really not. He's not. It doesn't strike me as a difficult scoring conditions guy. Well, he's not. I mean, he's like 130 of this in this field in difficult scoring conditions. He finished 66th here last year. I mean, we've seen some signs of life. I guess 3rd at the Sanderson in October, 11th at the American Express in January, 20th at the AT&T this month. So definitely better than the slew of missed cuts we saw him for a lot of 2022. So the potential is still there. We saw.
Although the event he won though was pretty low scoring though, right? I mean, granted, I don't know. It wasn't quite the Honda where.
You're right. No, you're right.
Right.
No, yeah, it was the Palmetto, and he won at 11 under, which is funny because that was actually it's not that funny, but I don't think it mattered. I don't think we took Doc Redmond that week, but he finished 10 under, one shot off of him. So. Yeah, so you're right. And actually, I mean, similar-ish type field, a very underwhelming field. So maybe there's something there. I've considered it. And you know what? Maybe I will go there instead of my other thought that I have. So let's just get into the longer shots.
Okay.
Davis Riley at 65. We've bet on him a ton. Man, he's had so many top finishes over the past year and a half that you think he's got the potential to win on the PGA Tour, but he's really not played well recently. He's 3 missed cuts in 2023 and a 65th at the American Express. I mean, the last time we really saw him play above average was at the Sanderson in October. He finished 19th. But similar to what you mentioned recently, I mean, if you're looking for last year, he did play well in Florida. He finished 2nd at the Valspar to Sam Burns, where he definitely played very well. So maybe there's something to him playing well in Florida, but I'm kind of torn between him and Higo as, it's my other guy under 100 to 1, and then I have a little bit of a long shot later on. So really the floor is yours, anyone from 60 to 100, whatever you want to go.
Yeah, I consider Davis Riley. I mean, I took him a few times at the beginning of the year. He didn't do a whole lot. He's coming in not really showing signs that he's going to win this week, but some weird things have happened at the Honda before. I'm not going to completely rule him out. I think I'm going to go. I'm really feeling the South Africans this week. I think I'm going to go to EVR.
All right. Another not really surprising. Another guy you like.
Yeah, I like him 70-1 in this field. I could not say no, but he is hitting his irons really well lately. We'll see. I mean, he's won before at where did he win? Either the Bermuda or the Barracuda, one of those two. I think it was the Bermuda, but one of those courses where there's some wind and water coming into play and sort of a coastal course. So 70-1. I just feel like EVR is he's better than that number indicates. I think he's got the potential. I think he should be like a 40-50 range in this field. And he hasn't exactly come through for me a ton when I've taken him, but I couldn't resist him this week at 70 with this week of a field.
All right, fair enough. Some other notable names there. I mean, Webb Simpson's at 70, Ryan Palmer at 65. Russell Knox, who we've taken. Obviously, there's going to be some wins. Maybe consider Knox at 75. But yeah, then we're in 100 and above, and I this is where take some guys you if they won and you didn't have a few bucks on them, that you'd be pissed, and that's for me Harry Higgs. There's not a ton super positive, but 3 straight made cuts, finished 18th at the American Express, and we see him pop up on leaderboards here and there, and then he ends up throwing in a bad round. But if he can ever put it together for 4 rounds, I think he can get in contention. He does have a top 20 here in 2021. He finished 19th, and he lost 3 strokes putting that week. So I think he feels comfortable here. He's gained strokes on approach in all 3 appearances, gained strokes off the tee in all 3 appearances. If he can figure out the putting green, which, I mean, Harry Higgs is a pretty good putter. I think being back here for the 4th year, I think hopefully there's some signs that he can kind of turn that around. But he's at 130-1 on FanDuel. Might be able to get a little bit of better number. But he's my long shot pick of the week. And I'm sure you have probably a long shot thought or two. But before we get to that, Luke Donald, I've talked about him every year at the Honda Classic. He is surprisingly at 160-1 this year, although I guess maybe not that surprising because of how weak the field is. But I would look for a top 20 or 40 market on him. He has missed his last 2 cuts, but 11th in 2020. It's still at an older age. 27th in 2017. 7th, 8th, 10th, 2nd, going back from 2015 to all the way back to 2011. So I kind of like Luke in the Florida swing. I think he's got some value as an older guy and the top finishing markets, even though he has missed a cut the last year. So I'm going to stay on the Luke Donald Express for him playing at PGA National.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, anything's possible this week. I definitely like. I can't say anything negative about Harry. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to join you on that or not. But yeah, can't say anything bad about it. I'm trying to figure out what the hell I want to do with a long shot. The difficult part this week is when you get down the board. Pretty much everybody's bad.
Yeah, well, there's very good reasons to not bet them to win, for sure.
I keep trying to talk myself in the guys, and
Matt Wallace.
I mean, I'm trying to find a spin zone on Matt Wallace because I do think that he's good relatively for this field. I mean, last week he lost 6.2 strokes off the tee. The last 4 events, he's not only has he missed a cut in all of them, but he's lost strokes off the tee. He's been hitting his irons okay. But then I just go to what he did last year in the Florida swing, and it was a bunch of missed cuts. There's not too many encouraging signs for him.
Yeah. I have the same thought for a couple of the guys I take a lot. Norlander, for one. I mean, it's a long shot. Why not? He's over 200. I mean, he missed all 4 cuts in the Florida swing last year. And yeah, he's been atrocious off the tee. He's missed both cuts in his career at the Honda.
You know who I might get? This is a name from the past here, but he was once a very promising name from the European Tour. What about Matthias Schwab?
Yeah.
170 to 1.
Yeah, he played last week with Tiger. So actually, he played okay last week up until the weekend, I believe.
Yeah, look at what he did. He was 7th last year at the Honda.
Interesting.
Yeah, he was 7th last year at the Honda. 3 of the last 4 weeks, he's gained on approach. He was 26th at the Amex, 50th at the Genesis. He's gained 3 in a row around the green. Yeah, last week he came in 50th, but he lost 3 strokes putting. So if he changes that around, yeah, I think I found my long shot right there.
All right, I like it. So yeah, I mean we're down here, and also we haven't touched on Doc Redman, 250 to 1. Any good thoughts there for Doc?
I don't know. I feel like my donations are running pretty high on Doc, but
yeah, 2 missed cuts here. It is fast too, so nothing really great to talk about for him. So yeah, I think that'll do it. Let's recap briefly. I'm gonna be on Poston with you, and then Harris English, Taylor Pendrith, still undecided on Higo and Riley, Harry Higgs, and then a Luke Donald prop, and probably some other top 20, top 40 plays as well. But going to be running pretty light this week on the Honda Classic. Not really super excited for this event, but it is what it is. So that's my card. What do you got?
Yeah, I am looking at Poston, Seabez, Garrick Higo, EVR, and Matthias Schwab. So I can assure you this is very different than cards I've had in the past, but hey, it's we got a weak field this week, and we're going to take some chances.
Yeah, we got to take some chances. And then one and done thoughts for me. It's still been a pretty bad year. I ended up pivoting off of Xander to Cameron Young last week, which didn't do me much better. So floating into 3,000s in the Pat Mayo one and done. This week is a non-elevated event, so it's not a ton of pressure. I feel like I'm going to look for potentially lower-owned player, but I don't really know where people are going to go with this week. The popular pick, I'm sure, will be Sung Jae and then Shane Lowry. I mean, they're clearly the 2 best players here, but I think I'm going to take maybe a shot on Pendrith or Poston to try to get maybe a lower-owned guy, see if we get a win. But yeah, the new elevated events have not treated me well for one and done. That's for sure. But yeah, we got a lot to look forward to. I mean, this is the down part of the elevated events portion of the PGA schedule. But next week we're right back at it at Bay Hill for the Arnold Palmer, and then the Players the week following. So still a good time to bet on golf. And we also have another episode out previewing the Live Series at Mayakoba, their first event of the year. So make sure to check into that as well. Some decent odds there and some great storylines. So we will talk to y'all next week for Bay Hill, and good luck to everyone.